USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com, featuring conversations with college hockey coaches and players and journalists who cover the sport.
On this episode of USCHO Spotlight, our guest is Brian Riley, head coach of Army West Point. He's in his 15th season behind the Black Knights bench.
And Brian, what a great start to the season here. Obviously, the last couple of weeks, especially 2 weeks in league play, 7 points out of 8. All those games on the road, you had a win against Merrimack at home. Your team seems to be kicking it off pretty well here to start the season.
Yeah, you know what, Jim? Thanks, and it's great to be on with you guys. Coming into the season, we had graduated 8 seniors that from the first day they came in, they were kind of given the keys to the kingdom, and they were in key roles right from the get-go. So, wasn't sure with them graduating what it would be like getting started here, but I think it kind of started in the spring with our leaders, our captains, Dalton McAfee, Taylor Maruya did a great job kind of setting the tone and coming in to be able to play 3 non-league games to try to get everybody in. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, both of those weekends on the road, Robert Morris and Mercyhurst, you just hope that you come away with something. And we were fortunate the first weekend to come away with 3 points. And then last weekend at Mercyhurst, which has been a house of horrors for us, I think the hockey guys were finally on our side, and we found a way to win on Friday night, or we won Friday night and found a way to win on Saturday night with the goal with the goalie out, and then won in overtime on a power play. So the good news is the 7 league points now, they can't take away. So that's the goal every weekend, to try to put points in the bank.
It is certainly a good Atlantic Hockey League start, but we go back, as you can even go back one more weekend, and you got to win at home against Merrimack, and you're now 4-0-1 in your last 5. And the thing that sticks out to me about those games, looking at the number of goals allowed, 2-2-2, 1-2, 9 goals allowed in 5 games, that has got to be something as a coach that's very pleasing.
Oh, absolutely, because for us here at West Point, we've always kind of taken a lot of pride in our defense, and our first 2 games were a little rough. I think we gave up a 4th spot to Union and then 5 to UConn. But, now our guys have settled in, and obviously Trevin Kozlowski has, without playing a minute last year, has kind of seized his opportunity here these last 5 games. And but like you said, I'm really pleased with what we're doing when we don't have the puck, and our guys have bought into the understanding of when you play Army, that we're going to be tough and physical and hard to play against.
I look down as we kind of roll on with the defensive side at the stats, and the offense is coming from defense as well. Alex Wilkinson and Dalton McAfee, both of them, 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points through 7 games. I hear coaches say it all the time. If you don't get some scoring from your back end, you're not going to be a successful team. This is probably what makes a good team a good team.
Well, for sure. So our D-corps is a little different this year than it has been in the past. Like we've always had a couple big physical guys back there, and this year, it's definitely a different makeup. But one of the things that we talked about as a staff, we really felt that our D-corps could help provide offense, and we have, you just mentioned Dalton McAfee, who's a transfer from BU. Alex Wilkinson, he was Atlantic Hockey Defenseman of the Year. A lot of people don't know, we have an NHL draft pick here, Matt Berkovich, who's drafted by Anaheim, that had to sit out last year. John Zimmerman was an all-rookie player. So I think we have a real good foundation, but on our blue line, but we also have the ability, like you just talked about, I think, to at offense from the back end.
Brian, when I look at some of the other aspects of your team, I think you started to mention Kozlowski and what he has meant, and how do you go about it as a coach to kind of figure out when you have two young goaltenders, both sophomores, Jared Dempsey being the other, the selection process? What is it like to go through camp as a goaltender at West Point?
Well, so for us, Demps was the only guy that had experience coming back, between Trebin and Matt Penta, who was out on a medical leave of absence for a year. So because of the fact that he had the experience and we thought he played well in camp, he was going to get the start early. But we also knew that we weren't going to be able to ride him for, 30 plus something games. So at some point, somebody else is going to get an opportunity. And it just so happened that Trevin, I don't know if people realize 2 years ago, he was the New England Prep Player of the Year when he played at Gunnery. Then he went out it was 3 years ago, then he went out to the BC League. We knew he was going to get an opportunity at some point, and you know what? We put him in the third period against UConn. You could tell he was a little nervous, but we said, hey, you know what? We'll come back with him the next night against Merrimack, and you know what? I mean, he hasn't looked back. So for us, I think right now you just ride the hot guy, and I'm sure other guys will get opportunities, and hopefully the second half of the year you kind of figure out who your number one guy is. We're speaking with
Army West Point head coach Brian Riley. One of the things you have to face that probably no other coach, maybe you could throw in Air Force, but not even to that extent. You have to recruit players that are going to go into the military, and for your entire time as a head coach, and even before that as an assistant, you're bringing in guys who know that they are likely to face military action. What kind of a challenge is that, and what does that also say about the type of person that you recruit?
Well, you know what? I think it speaks volumes to the type of young men that have been in our program and that are currently in our program. I think that we feel we have a lot to offer here at West Point, and the military piece is something that a lot of kids, most of the guys that we have on our team, never even thought of, serving their country or coming to West Point. But when you bring them out for a visit and you have them talk to people, I think they start to realize that, hey, you know what? This could be a great opportunity. And so I tell people that, my dad coached here for 36 years and, won a gold medal, won all sorts of games. He's a big Boston guy. And I used to always think, why doesn't Dad go back to Boston to a big hockey school? But now having sat where he sat, I understand why he stayed at 36, or why he stayed for 36 years at West Point. To know as a coach that you play a role in helping to shape and develop young men to be leaders that are going to go and serve their country, to me makes this the most rewarding and humbling coaching job in all of college sports. So I'm really, really blessed and fortunate to be around the young men that I'm around every day.
Well, you mentioned your dad, so there's been a Riley as head coach at Army going back to 1950, but now there are three generations of Rileys involved in coaching, as your nephew Brett helming the fledgling program at D3 Wilkes University. What does that mean to your family, and also your son's playing at Mercyhurst? What does it mean to your family to continue this hockey tradition?
Well, I guess it's in the blood. A couple of years ago, I asked Jack, who graduated from Mercyhurst last year, and I looked at him and I said, so what do you want to do after graduation? And he looked at me with this kind of look, what are you talking about, Dad? And he goes, I want to coach. And I was like, oh boy. So, I guess, and Brett, who you just talked about, putting a new program out there this year at Wilkes, and I'm sure my other son, Brendan, he's probably wants to do the same thing. It's just something that has been part of the family for a long time, and everybody loves the sport. But I think having the opportunity to coach after seeing my dad and for them their grandfather, you know what? I think they understand allows them to stay around the sport that they've grown up with, and as coaches to hopefully make a difference with young men.
This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online.
We are talking with Brian Riley. He's the head coach at Army West Point. But for the last number of years, you can tell me the actual number. It feels like it was a little bit of a time. You were on the NCAA Men's Ice Hockey Committee. Obviously, your tenure there ended, but what was that role like? What did you feel as being able to represent that game? Maybe the pressures, obviously the tournament's a lot, but just being part of kind of guiding this sport from the NCAA level.
Oh, that was a wonderful experience. So it was the last 5 years. I think I've been in coaching, for 30 plus years, and it seems like the last 7 years I can't get off committees. I was on the NCAA committee. I was the president of the American Hockey Coaches Association, and but the opportunity to serve on that NCAA committee as somebody who would go to a Frozen Four, or I never realized, the work that went on behind the scenes. So it gave me a much greater appreciation for what the folks at the NCAA do. It allowed for me to, the hockey world's a small world, and it allowed for me to meet so many different people, from administrators to coaches to media people like yourselves. I'm so glad that I did it. And I would encourage every college coach out there, if you have an opportunity to serve in one of these capacities, you have to do it, because I also looked at it as an opportunity to give back to the sport, and this sport has been great to me. And but like I said, it was a wonderful experience being on that committee.
Obviously, during that time, Brian, the tournament is a major responsibility, but there is, and also the responsibility of that committee to kind of be the listening ear for the coaches and for college hockey, and to find ways to, whether it's grow the game or change the game or modify the game. What do you take away as some of the better accomplishments that the committee was able to make in that time?
Well, I think you have representation from each league, and it's hard because you go in there and you have a mindset of, hey, we want to do what's best for our league. And but at the same time, you have to put that aside and look at it from a standpoint of, hey, we have to do what's best for college hockey. And so, like I said, to be a part of that, and I think to get the Frozen Four to some of the places that it's been, and some of the places that it's going is exciting. I'm not going to lie, I'm a big Tampa guy, but
who isn't?
Right? There's something to be said about walking to that rink with palm trees, and no, but I mean, everybody does such a great job at each of the sites. You have the traditional sites of Boston and Minnesota, St. Paul. So I'm excited to see what this committee does as far as taking the next step. They're always looking to try to tweak things, and sometimes the rules committee and the NCAA championship committee kind of work through some different challenges. But I think overtime is something where you're probably going to see, I would say you're probably going to see a change here coming up. But like I said, just a wonderful experience, and I'm thankful and very appreciative that I was afforded that opportunity.
Brian, you've seen Atlantic hockey from its beginnings to where it is now. And while the league is still struggling to put together a stronger out-of-conference record, it would be hard to argue that the league hasn't improved in a number of areas, whether it's facilities or recruiting or coaching. Even we look at a young coach like Eric Lang, who served as an assistant with you. What's your overall view on the progress Atlantic hockey has made, say, over the last 10 years?
Well, you just hit on it right there. Number one, the league is much better than it was 10 years ago. It's much better than it was 5 years ago, and that's a reflection of the student athletes that are coming into the league. You talked about facilities. Now you look at, for example, Sacred Heart and AIC playing in American Hockey League buildings. I call RIT's building new, but it's probably, 5 years old now. Bentley's new facility. So facilities, which was an area that I think people talked about the league having to grow, has certainly taken a huge step. And what you just talked about, coaches, and I have so much respect for the coaches in this league. Obviously, I think Langer is one of the best coaches in college hockey. And I could go down the line there, but I would say that it's probably a little disappointing this year so far, the out of conference record. I know that there were high hopes, and there's still games to be played. But I think over time here, now that you are seeing teams coming to Atlantic hockey facilities, like we never had a problem. Air Force didn't have a problem, but now because of the facilities, I think and Jimmy, you know this. I think was it Lowell that was just at Bentley.
Yes, on Saturday night.
At Bentley, right? Yeah. So you wouldn't have seen this, and give credit to Northeastern. They were playing Bentley in the jar, but you will see a lot more teams. Coming to Atlantic hockey facilities. And I think that's great for college hockey, but it'll also help the league continue to grow.
Brian Riley, head coach at Army West Point. You will play, I guess it can be considered your rival, your arch rival, maybe Air Force this weekend. Two military academies, very similar mentalities. I know there's a lot of tradition involved in those games when you do get to play Air Force. The first 2 of 4 this Friday and Saturday at home for you. What is it? What is this series like? Can you explain it to a fan? I don't want to say pomp and circumstance, but it's kind of the Army Navy of hockey.
Oh yeah, I mean it's different, and I know that obviously BU has BC, North Dakota has Minnesota, and so many others. But this rivalry is different from the standpoint. It's pretty neat. At the end of the series, you always see the seniors from each team step out and line up together on the blue line, while the remaining players from both teams line up together behind them, and they play the alma mater. And what other people don't realize is after Saturday's game at one of the series, both teams get together and have a meal together. So, there's that respect factor. Ultimately, both teams are really on the same team. Yet for 2 nights, they'll try to beat the hell out of each other. But there is that respect factor that I think kind of really makes this series, this rivalry, different than many of the others that are out there.
Well, it should be 2 great nights of hockey, and obviously, Brian, your team off to a nice start this year. Congratulations on that, but best of luck going forward. Brian Riley from Army West Point, thanks for your time tonight, and we always enjoy talking with you, but enjoy this weekend. It should be a special weekend of hockey.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and certainly appreciate all that you guys do for college hockey.
Jim, Brian Riley has long been one of our favorite people around college hockey.
Especially for me, I've been around the Riley family since I got to UMass Lowell in the early 1990s with Billy Riley behind the bench there, and he's still kind of a legend in that program. But obviously his dad, Jack, started the tradition at Army West Point that he still continues today. You don't go a long way in hockey without bumping into a Riley, and that's one of the great things about the game. But they're very humble people, a great family, very extended family, as you pointed out. The fact that nephews are now starting to coach, and obviously I'm sure some of Brian's kids will step into those coaching roles in days to come. But what they have done for this game, especially when you think about the amount of time that this family has put in at a military academy at Army West Point, that's very special to this game and to our country, because they have raised some great young men that have gone on to do some great things way outside of the game of hockey.
That's it for this episode of USCHO Spotlight. Catch us on Thursdays for the USCHO Game of the Week podcast and on Sundays for the USCHO Weekend Review content. And on Sundays for the USCHO Weekend Review podcast. And be sure to subscribe to all three so you don't miss one. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger. We'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Spotlight, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.